The journey continues. We are now at the Wednesday of task 2, the midpoint. Rubric 8, prompt 4A. This is a very similar prompt for all 3 of the handbooks that we're working with today, so I'll talk it through generally, and then in the latter part, share anything that's specific to the individual handbook that you're working with. So with this particular rubric, the key element is explaining how you elicited and built on children's responses. So this is very much a focus on a dialogue between you and the students in your class. So a key piece being eliciting responses, so focusing on the types of questions that you're asking. Being able to draw evidence from your video clips of questions that could be fact-based at times, but primarily are higher order thinking questions, such as how or why questions. So you using these types of questions within your teaching. So that's step 1, is being sure that in your video or videos that you're using as your EdTPA evidence, the clips you've chosen, finding examples of you asking these types of questions to your students. So that's the first piece. The next is how are you building on the responses of the children in your class. And so the building on children's responses, that's where you start to move from a 3 to a 4 or a 5. In understanding rubric progressions, they provide some helpful examples of how you might build on children's responses. So examples include referring to a previous child's response in developing a point or clarifying a fact. So for example, when Erica shared this, we learned this. Then moving to the next part of the lesson. Calling on the child to elaborate on what they said. Kelly, could you tell us a bit more about that particular contribution and what you were thinking there, right? So not just taking the response and saying, good job, yes, no, but moving past that to build on, to really engage substantively with what the students said. Posing questions to guide children's discussion. So in hopefully a bit less of a teacher-led discussion, but you putting questions in and then giving the students the chance to do some student-to-student talk. Soliciting a child's examples and asking another child to identify what they've had in common. Asking a child to summarize a lengthy discussion or a rambling explanation, and asking a child to respond to a child's comment or answer a question posed by another child to move instruction forward. So any or all of these would be examples of building on children's responses. So moving just past good job, not so clear, yes, no answers, to really you starting with fact-based questions, how or why questions with eliciting, and then thinking about really listening to what children are saying and building upon those responses. Now, building on those responses to what end? For elementary literacy, once again, we're focusing on promoting thinking and applying the essential literacy strategy and related skills to comprehend or compose text. So if possible, to really try to draw a connection between the types of questions that you're asking and the way that you're building on children's responses, both in a vacuum, but even more so, how those are helping students to deepen their thinking and to apply the essential literacy strategy and related skills. For math, promoting thinking and developing understandings of mathematical concepts. So if possible, for you to be able to contextualize the example you gave in the video, both as an example of how you elicited student responses to higher order thinking questions, hopefully how you built on student responses, and then how that exchange, how that dialogue between you and the students helped them to develop understandings of mathematical concepts. Finally, for early childhood, how are you eliciting student responses and building upon them to promote language and literacy development through active learning? So for example, if you're doing a lesson on sequencing, and how did you use questions to try to develop students' thinking from simple to complex? what was the role of questioning and you building upon student responses in helping them learn in that way. The seesaw will now continue its ascent as we move along to Rubric 9.